And we're live. Let's just take a quick moment to talk about what supports this podcast, and that is our BFL sauce. That is the sauce that really put us in business and has kept us in business. It started as our fry sauce, then it graduated up to our burger sauce. After that, we were looking for all kinds of specials, all kinds of things that we could put it on because it enhanced that, and it had just a sweet and tangy, something that just went well with so many foods. We eventually tried it on our breakfast burritos, and we realized we cracked the code to the modern day breakfast burrito. That sauce is available at bigfatlunchbox.com. Sales from that website directly support this podcast. And if this podcast brings you any value at all, please consider visiting our website. Maybe take a look at some of our Big Fat gear, our merch that we have on there. We've got hoodies, t-shirts, and different variations of our BFL sauce. We have our classic, our jalapeno, our habanero. Great on everything from egg rolls and fried rice to fried chicken. It even goes great on fish tacos and salmon. We have people from all over sending us photos of all the different kinds of foods that they are putting our BFL sauce on. It's made with a lot of love and a lot of attention to detail, and we couldn't be more proud of it. If sauce isn't your thing, or if you have plenty of it and you still want to support the podcast, there is a spot right below the podcast on our website there where you can contribute to help us produce this podcast. At checkout, simply type in BFPEP, as in episode, BFPEP15 for 15% off everything on the website. BigFatLunchbox.com. Let's get to this.
It's a worry-free.
You guys are ganging up.
Philosophy.
That's what I feel.
Akuda Matata.
I feel loved. When you two gang up on me, I feel loved.
Ganged up on you.
Yeah.
You need a hug.
Always. Always.
Always needs a hug.
Yeah. Glenn tried to get a hug from me the other day at work. He was like, I just need a hug from you. I just laughed, and I don't think I said anything because I was like, he's weird. Probably being serious right now. And I didn't know how to take it.
Probably was. Physical contact, you were like,
I don't want to get sued. Yeah. Later on. Anyway.
For inappropriate contact, you can hug somebody and not be. Anyway, go on. I get it.
It's a crazy world out there. You never know.
Do the side hug.
Gotcha.
I got a hug from Nico the other day.
Oh, yeah, I did too. Well, probably because I kind of went in there and gave him a hug and Kayla a hug.
Yeah, well, I mean, I gave Kayla a hug too, but I got a hug from Nico. I get a hug from Reno every now and then.
Yeah, Reno's a hugger. He's a hugger.
That's nice, though. I'm glad because we've gotten into this culture and the society of like.
Dude, I'm so giving you a hug when we leave. I'm like, I'm going to make it awkward.
Well, and I feel like
15-second awkward hold.
And you can do it because I can't get away from you.
Hugs kind of feel awkward now because we have been so like, stay away from everybody. And like when you're at the grocery store, I'm always making sure I'm not in somebody's bubble. Like I walk way around them.
That is true. I even noticed that like the other day I found myself apologizing because the guy in front of me, I was getting medication. The guy in front of me looks back, and
I'm like, "Whoa!"
And I'm like, "Ooh, am I too close?" I apologize. He's like, "No, you're just fine." He was wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, it makes you really like. I was never thought about being in people's bubble, but right now I'm always like walking way around people, and especially if they're wearing a mask, I even like give an extra wide berth.
Yeah, because you know that it obviously they believe that. The craziness is going on.
That brings me to my favorite story of her dad.
Was he wearing a mask?
No. He was telling us about it. It was weird.
I have this image right now of him like coming out of the shower going, Milo, come give me a hug.
Oh,
anyway,
no,
go on.
That's not him.
No.
No, he's this big, huge dude. Just, really big guy, big hulking guy, very serious, no nonsense, very no nonsense. And he'll tell you like he has no problem telling you what he thinks of you right now. And so, I just love this story because he came out to visit his mom, and he was like, hey, I'm going to come see you guys, coming to visit my mom, but I'll come see you guys. So he came out to the house and he was telling us about it, and COVID was just getting going and people were social distancing and everybody was starting to put stickers on the ground, stay 6 feet apart. And he was like, I was at what's the name of that store?
Runnings.
They have a sporting goods and like, it's almost like a part sporting goods and part
hardware.
Yeah. You know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he was there at Runnings over in Baker. And he was like, yeah, I was at Runnings the other day, and I was standing in line at the checkout. And this guy comes up to behind me, and he says to me, I don't think you're 6 feet away from that feller in front of you. And he says, I looked at him, and I said, F you. and then he's like, I couldn't believe that guy he just said that to me. And he's like, I just told him, F you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can picture that. Like I don't know what I would do if that guy, I wouldn't say that to somebody. You're not 6 feet away from that person.
No, I wouldn't either.
No, but the guy deserved to be told F you.
I know.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. I wouldn't have said it like that. Like I would have wanted to, but I wouldn't have. He just does it. And I respect that. I was like, that's so awesome. I love this story. This guy.
So my wife, it drives her crazy. Well, I don't know. It is. Yesterday we're at the wrestling, but I've done this a couple times. One time yesterday we were at the wrestling. I'll finish this one and I'll go to the next one. And the lady sits down. We're clearly in the bleachers. Like you're in, I mean, it's like there's nowhere around that you have to pay. And nobody made you pay, And I'm like, hey, did you pay your $2? And she turns around and she's like, no, where do I pay that at? And I'm like, I'll take it for you. And my wife's like, he's joking. Like he's teasing me. But I did that same one time to a choir concert, but I was standing by the door at the time listening to it because I was late. And this lady comes in and I'm like, hey, you got to pay $5. And she's digging in her purse, And at the choirs, they're singing. And I'm like, I'm just kidding. Like, go. It drives her crazy. But that kind of stuff, I love it because it's just totally, it's just like out there, and it's totally.
Oh, I totally would be digging through my purse too. Like, okay.
Big huge guy saying it's $5.
Okay, whatever. You want 10?
One time I was on an elevator, and my boss and his boss, and then a person that I had known, and she didn't work for me at the time, but she had previously. She walks in, the elevator door closes, and it'd be like me going, like, Milo, what did the doctor say about that rash? Is it contagious? And then just letting it sit. And so the people in there, they're like, Cody, like, kind of laughed. Well, we get down to the next, because we're only going from second to first floor. And we get down to the second floor, and they all left, and she kind of hung back, and she grabbed mine, and kind of did that old man tug. She's like, how did you know I had a rash? I didn't.
Just a shot in the dark. My nephew, he's a cop in Vegas, and when he was first kind of a young cop, they were driving up and down the strip, him and his partner, and they would pull up alongside people, and this is funny, but I was like, dude, that's so unconstitutional. You can't do that. Anyway, and he knows it, but he was just like, man, we used to just like pick people out walking down the street and be like, definitely that guy's got a warrant. What do you think that guy has a warrant?
And pay me now.
And they would pull up next to him and they'd be like, hey buddy, did you get that warrant taken care of? And the guy would be like, man, I've been meaning to. And they're like, why don't you go ahead and step to the back of the car right here, we'll help you out with that. And I'm like, that's entrapment or fishing or something. You can't go fishing. And he's like, yeah, like they don't have to tell us that they have a warrant, but if they do, then we can arrest them. And he's like,
oh my dear.
I would totally be. I could see them doing that because you're kind of playing a joke, And they're like, it's got to be something to like play in with the.
Yeah, whoever it is walking down the street, they're just like, oh no, this cop.
So we used to. When we're on our missions, we used to come up. So it'd be like you and I would be walking the porch and be like, "Okay, Milo, you have to say at this next porch, you got to work in, boobs into the next door approach."
You are not supposed to be working that into your next door.
Well, we'd come up with one, and so you'd be like, "No, I ain't freaking doing that one, right?" And so it'd be like, "Okay. So how about let's come up with another one." So it'd be like large feet.
Okay.
And so then you'd be like, all right, you're on. And so you'd have to be like, hey, how you doing today? We're just here. I'm sorry about my large feet, but I wanted to make sure.
They're like, what does that have to do with anything? And now you have a message for me.
Yeah, but you can see some people would catch it. And they'd be like, but the key was to never pause right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
The key was just to throw it in there. And then to finish with what you were saying. So we're here to have a message about God. So excuse my large feet, but can we come in and
Excuse my
and
large feet. That's great.
And so it would be like this. It made it fun to like come up. But speaking of pulling people off, I was in the inner cities the whole time. And
where did you go again?
Connecticut and Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
But I was in the ghettos. I have lots of stories about that. But so any of the prostitutes, we would come up with like, hey, and we called it OYMing, which is open your mouth. But like, hey, you got to tell them about the church. So we'd have these prostitutes, and I'd be like, Milo, you're up. And or you'd be like, McNiven, it's your turn. And so you'd go up and approach the prostitutes. And we'd say, hey, we're from the Church of Jesus Christ. Well, this one. And she, you could tell she was high on, she had been, like, her life was rough. Drugs. And I'm like, hey, we're for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. We'd just like to, try to show you, a message of glad tidings, kind of thing. And she looked at me and she goes, you know what I am. And if you don't want any, you need to just keep walking.
Oh.
I go, okay. But anyway, that became kind of our, anytime you, because you're just rough. There'd be gangsters, there'd be people running with, you'd see them running with guns. And you'd be like, hey, that one's yours. Like, let's go away. I'm that guy,
Man, you guys were like...
You were hardcore.
It was hardcore. Yeah, there was times I was knocking the door, first day, knocking the door, and I hear this like, beep, 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 and I turn around, which is not, by the way, where I grew up in Utah. I was like totally out of my element. I look around, and the guy's running behind me. And we're like, I'm pretty sure that guy just stole the freaking radio. And he's like, just don't even look at him.
At the house you just knocked on?
Up the street.
Oh.
Within a couple,
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't, you turn around, no one answered that one. And so you turn around and you're like, whoa, where was that? And you can see the glass broke. And you're like, hey, well, let's walk past that, And you're like, no. And so you have this whole debate.
Yeah.
Do we walk past it? Do we not? We don't want someone thinking it was us.
Wow.
So anyway.
I guess you'd have to do those little things to keep it fun because that's the hardest sales pitch there is. You're selling faith. So to go to that door, I would have been super scared. You'd have to really have faith. You'd have to really believe in what you're doing. To me, it'd be terrifying. I didn't ever go on a mission.
Absolutely be terrifying because you have to believe, right?
You do, but then also, I feel like these hardcore people, the last person they're probably going to do anything to is somebody of faith, I feel like
True.
They're going to look at them, oh, they're just good people. You know what I'm saying? I feel like...
True.
So they called us Jesus's people. And I remember one time, and now you have to remember, for me, I graduated high school and within 3 months was on my mission. And so I had come from, I was a big fish in a small pond, especially with sports. And it was hard to just go from being out, you could look at someone sideways and, they just kind of looked away, to, nobody knew who you were. Nobody was. And so it was a different feeling. And then on top of it, going from I was in the suburbs of Salt Lake, mostly white, being put in where there's a bunch of blacks and Hispanics, didn't know the language any, and nobody cared who you were. It didn't mean anything to them.
No, absolutely.
And so it was definitely a culture shock on top of I remember laying in bed going, what in the world am I doing here, And then having to speak on, a religion that you're like, do I really believe this? What am I doing? I'm doing
what am I trying to sell these people?
I'm doing this for 2 years, and these guys are nerds. I remember thinking that, they get up in the early mornings, wear a white shirt and tie, and I can remember getting up at the MTC, and that place, you can imagine this building, double the size of it.
MTC, Missionary Training Center, in case anybody's listening.
Yeah, and having, you walk in the door, and there's all these shirts. Everybody looks the same, except your color of your hair, And I yelled just for fun and be like, hey, elder. And everybody looks at you. And I'm like, oh, never mind. I was looking for somebody else.
Because they're all called elder.
Because they're all called elder, yeah. And so it was just a different experience there for a little while.
Different little world.
I'll just sit here and interpret the generalizations. But
the subculture of it all.
Were you ever like, were you one of those who was like, oh, man, I didn't get sent to Germany?
No, I did not want South America. Like, to me, that was the briar patch of, if you were the cartoons and Peter Rabbit. Like, I was just like, dude, I do not want to go to South America. Those guys go down there and they never come back. Like, the drug deal, And so for me, it was like.
Did we lose a lot of missionaries down there?
No, we don't.
I'm like, I don't think I've heard of anything.
I got I had a son and several nephews that made it back.
But you have to understand, in my world, like, I was watching the TV shows that I watched. Those guys got shot.
Oh yeah,
and South America was not. Like say, I'd be like a mule for somebody, and happen to go across that. Like, hey, you're gonna make it across that. I'm like, dude,
yeah, you're gonna put this somewhere where it's gonna be very uncomfortable, and you're gonna walk this across.
Yeah, I in my mind, I was like, I was somebody's mule, and so I did not want to go to South America at all. Like, I was praying. God answered my prayers, by the way.
Yeah.
But
there's an adventurous side of me now. Like, back then, I wouldn't have wanted to go to South America either. April's always wanting to go to South America.
I do. I want to see everywhere. I want to go everywhere.
But all the time,
I've been there since.
She thinks I'm a big coward because I'm like, I'm not taking you this place, or I'm not taking you this place.
Like, yes,
it's not that I don't want to go there, and it's not that I have the power to take or not take. I'm just saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is like, I'm not a fan of that because I don't want to go to places where I got to worry about her or us. There's a side of me that I'm ready to go, like, make tacos in Yemen. I would do that, right? If all I had to do was worry about myself, I'm up for all kinds of adventure. But it makes me a little nervous going into places like where I'm like, oh, I don't want to, I can't have one of us be a hostage.
I think a lot of it depends on, there's some safe places. You have to be smart, and you need to know your surroundings.
Yeah, streetwise, you go to
streetwise,
places.
yeah.
You dress more. There's things that you do to take those
but
precautions.
see, I don't even want to think about what precautions. Like,
but that's anywhere. We go anywhere, even in Billings right now.
Yeah.
Well, I take certain precautions, even in Billings. But there's a difference between, like, I would go backpack South America. I've even told Connor, I'm like, dude, what are you doing working here for us? If I were you, this is what I told him when he got back from his mission. He was like, yeah, I just want to work here at the BFL with you, whatever. And I was like, okay, but I'll be honest, if I were you, I'd go get a roofing job for about 6 months. I'll let you sleep on the couch, save every penny you have, and then go back down to South America and spend 2 years living out of your backpack, traveling all over, and go have that experience. Go down there with your camera. Go try to interview drug lords. I don't know. Go find cartels out in the hills and document them making cocaine. I don't know. Like, go have fun. Like, whatever. Like, to me, it's not that I'm like Mr. Safety. I'm like, there's a lot to experience out there. There's certain things, though, I don't want to like put April in. I would go do that.
Well, that shows that you love her, right? I don't know what it says about your kid, but
I figure
I totally agree.
I figure he can handle himself.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? Like, he's just a nice
totally
kid.
agree.
Like,
I was kidding.
Yeah.
But so my backup plan. So I had a scholarship for wrestling before school and then after my mission, and our backup plan was my buddy. His name's Lance, LJ. Anyway, so he's now become Buddhist and he has a. So we called him LJ. Now it's like Puma.
Wait, did he grow up LDS?
Yeah.
And now he's a Buddhist?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's another story. And I have great stories with him.
I've never heard of somebody who's LDS. Rarely do you hear of somebody being LDS becoming something else.
Well,
they either just fall away and don't believe in anything, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, and his initials now are PW on it. And it's because of his Buddhist name.
Because you get a different name once you.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of like you're given a different name, and then
I want to find out what my Buddhist name is.
And
who assigns that? Anyway,
well, he was given it from his like leader, and but growing up,
find the Billings chapter.
If we had a buddy, and they were like into their girlfriend a lot, we'd be like, hey, you're PW, right? And so I'm telling you this story because it's funny. So here we were, like, we had a buddy die this year, last 6 months.
Right.
And so I was talking with him, and I'm like, hey, PW, and that makes me laugh, you know. And he goes, Cody, it would only be you. Like, you're the only one to understand. I'm like, do you even remember? He's like, oh, dude, yeah, I remember, but nobody else would get that joke. You guys get it?
Yeah, the initial and then her initial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hear the whole story, though. I want to hear. Well, never mind. I want to hear the whole like conversion story from going LDS to being a Buddhist. That's what I'm.
Oh, there we go. We'll have to do a podcast. He's in Germany now.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh,
with he's I think he met a really nice lady, but he had been married a couple times. You probably relate to that.
Hey, shots fired. Shots fired.
I was his best man, actually, and so he's been there for 5 years, actually, in Germany, and they do. She's written a couple books on what are they? Meditation, where you do stretching. What's that called? Yoga, and she's like big into yoga, so they do yoga.
Have you ever done yoga?
I have.
Really?
Yeah.
When did you do that?
In my 20s.
I've tried it a few times, but man,
Yoga is hard.
It kicks my booty.
And it is a full
I
body
stretch every
workout.
morning. I do stretching and stuff, but I just thought for me, yoga wasn't my thing, but.
As I'm getting older, though, I'm like, it's getting harder to do all that. I do stretch. So every morning, when this is when we were in our 20s, I don't know, it might have been 30, maybe, I don't know, late 20s. One of my best friends in college, moms, was just getting out of surgery, and she had commented that her doctor said that the best thing you can do as you get older is stretch every day, and just a simple, 5-minute stretch is something that most people can't touch their toes. Yeah,
I was like, whoa. Anyway, but that struck me. So every morning, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not doing a Pilates class by any means.
Yeah, I should get into stretching. We all should get into stretching. I'll tell you, I read this guy's book, David Goggins. You ever heard of David Goggins? David Goggins is probably the hardest man on planet Earth. This guy is just hard. He can handle anything and everything. It's incredible. This guy is amazing. I read his biography, and actually I listened to his audiobook, and it was done like a podcast. Awesome. It's really rough, though. It's got a lot of language, and he had a lot of tough experiences growing up as a kid. It was really tough to hear. But anyway, Navy SEAL, went from not being able to swim, to saying, I'm going to go do whatever the hardest thing is out there to go do, I'm going to go do. And he just ran hard like that for years and years and years, retired as a Navy SEAL. Then he started to run ultra marathons. And
what's an ultra marathon?
Ultra marathon, I'm going to say over 100 miles.
Okay.
Now he's running marathons that are like, I know marathon means, 26 after the Greek city of Marathon. But anyway, no, they're calling them ultra marathons, and they're putting together marathons that are like 250 miles and things like that. And he runs those. There's one that he runs in Death Valley. He's run several times now, and it's like 180 miles through Death Valley. And yeah,
that doesn't even sound anything. It's not even intriguing I don't want to stand in Death Valley.
I know, right? So you got to listen to this guy's book. It's amazing, his whole life story. And he's probably in his 40s now. So anyway, very interesting.
He's done things that would kill most people. Like half of the things he's done would kill most people. And like his brain, body,
he has the ability to just go to a different place with his brain and push his body
to levels.
Yeah. Anyway, he was saying how he thought he was going to die at this one time. His body just started to shut down on him, and he started to come apart. And he thought, everything I've put myself through, it is finally giving out on me. And I wish I was boy, I used to have a better memory. I could have just spelled all this out almost word for word. The general gist is this, though. He got really unhealthy at a certain point, and he just thought he was going to die. He got to where he couldn't move. Whatever.
He was like bedridden.
Oh, really?
And a lot of issues. He just thought, I've broken my body too far, and it's just not going to heal. I've pushed it too hard too many times. Then he started to remember about when they were in Navy SEAL training, there was a guy who came and said, hey, they would bring in these outside people to come train. And this guy put on a presentation about stretching. And they were all like, yeah, I'm a Navy SEAL. Like, I'm not. And he was just like, I didn't really take the guy very serious. Okay, yeah, stretching. He goes, all the workouts I did, I never stretched. All the running I did, I never stretched. I never did any of this. But I went back to this presentation about what this guy had to say, and I started to think about that, and I started to stretch. And anyway, he started to stretch, and his health improved dramatically. Like, he thought he was going to die, and then he started stretching. And he started stretching like 4 hours a day. Even now, he stretches 2 to 4 hours every day. And he's made that a part of his daily routine. He still hits the gym hard. He still does ultra marathons. But his overall health all of a sudden turned around dramatically. I mean, he had
stretching?
From stretching. And he said and then he gets all into the science of it all and everything else. But he talks about the importance of stretching and how much it's even more important than running or working out or all these other things. Like, we should be doing those things anyway, but he's saying the importance of stretching, and he's a firm believer that it saved his life and made him, it helped his body to heal, because it got to a point where his body quit healing and it couldn't heal itself. And by stretching, it somehow freed him up, and he goes through a routine every single day.
I wonder if that's called yoga. Like, it does a yoga routine of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, yoga is a lot of stretching, but it's your body pretty much, the weighting of your body on stuff. But yeah, yoga's tons of stretching.
Yeah. You got to follow him on whatever. He puts out stuff mainly on Instagram and whatever, but he's the type, if it's 20 below outside in a blizzard and you don't feel like running, that's the time to get out and go run. And he just like screams his way through it. He just makes himself do it. He's like, do you think I really want to go do this? No, I don't want to go do it. That's why I gotta conquer myself, because I don't want to do it. So I'm going to make myself do it because I don't want to do it. And he's a great motivator.
Self-discipline to like a whole new level of like, he's the only person. Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
He does it with very colorful language the entire time, which makes him super entertaining. He's hilarious about it, but because he's screaming at himself and calling himself names and calling you names and everything else. But that's just who he is, and he's unapologetic about it. He grew up really hard, getting beat up by his dad, and he has a really tough success story. But it's he's conquered himself, and he's like, you know what? Most of us only push ourselves, like, I think he says, like 40%, and then we shut down, we give up. That's when we stop. He says we don't even tap into the next 60% of what our body is capable of. And that's what he's found through doing ultra marathons. He's like, I think I'm done. Like, I've pushed myself far enough. And he's like, and then I realized that, no, there's a whole 60% that I haven't even tapped into of what I'm capable of. And it's pretty powerful stuff, the way he talks about it.
I'll have to look him up.
He calls himself Goggins. He's just like, his name's David Goggins, but he's like, it's this thing that helps him kind of unlock. We were talking about that, honestly, with Chuck Young, the Destroyer.
Yeah.
We're like, do you go to a place where you like turn your hat around and like a movie, and is it like a switch for you? Well, that's what Goggins does. Goggins just turns a switch in his mind, and then he can push himself way farther than what he thought or what anybody thinks is capable of. And
but did you do that this morning when you turned your hat around?
Maybe it was a subconscious switch I just threw. Or maybe it was because my light, my brim.
You did the Goggins.
Yeah, my brim covers, and I'm just super dark.
It's called the switch. We're calling it the switch.
We'll call it the switch. And there's a great video of Goggins online. and he's lifting and he's pushing and he's on his back and he's pushing and he just starts screaming. He's yelling like, "Who's gonna carry the boats? Who's gonna carry the boats?" And he's just like yelling out this mantra of as he's lifting, and that's what all of a sudden he goes to this. He's Goggins. He's this character, this Goggins, and he's able to push himself through difficult things. And I don't know.
It is pretty amazing our abilities with our mind. You know, when you think about the different dimensions that you could attach to your mind.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's amazing to me when you think about because you have a spiritual dimension, you have a physical dimension, and then you have the, logical dimension of where you're at. And I think that we don't tap into those near as much as we could or should.
Yeah. So we've been talking about all kinds of things here, and but what I wanted to get to, or what we wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk to you about. We were talking about side hustles. We were talking about goals this year. We were talking about unlocking things and of our potential levels of success and things like that. And we can just go in all kinds of directions for hours. We could sit in here for 8 hours and bounce all over the place. And I can continue bouncing all over. But even just now, just as we're talking, we've been kind of tapping on a lot of different areas. But it to me, it all ties in. Being able to push yourself, even, the Goggins thing, the going door to door, keeping things fun when you're doing something that is difficult. When you're, these are all little things like, we're just some kids goofing around, but we're also like, how do we keep this lively? How do we keep this, fresh? How do we keep motivated? And we do this by having fun while we're doing things that are not easy and they're uncomfortable. Which brings me to side hustles. Sometimes we develop side hustles because, we're trying to keep things, we're trying to develop our potential. We're trying to go to new levels of success. And sometimes doing those side hustles, you got to, to prevent burnout, you got to find the real reasons of why you're doing things, why you believe in it, why why you're pushing through something, or that in the beginning oftentimes are difficult. And, there's a lot of people start different things and then they fall away because they're not prepared to encounter those levels of pain and suffering and being even uncomfortable. I know that you're involved with your side hustle, or one of your, I don't know everything you're up to, but one thing I do want to know more about is you do talk about metals a lot. You do talk about a program called 7K that you've been involved with, and I don't know where you're at with that. And I have been curious. So this is not in full disclosure here, I don't, this isn't like something that
you know much about.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to figure out like why do you do this? Why, and what is your end goal here? And what are the challenges you've been facing through this? And just exactly what's happening. Tell us a little bit about your side hustle.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back a little bit and just kind of to give the definition of why I do this. Growing up, money was tight for me. And, I was a single mom, and my dad was spending time in prison, and they went through a divorce. Anyway, so money was always, the question of whether we could do something or not was like, well, do we have money to do that? Do we have money for dinner tonight, kind of thing? And my mom worked 3 jobs, went to school full time, and she graduated from college the same time I graduated from high school. And so I had made a couple promises to myself when I was a teenager. One was I want to make sure I'm there for my kids. And the two was I don't want to have to worry. I want to understand how to save money so that I don't have to worry about it as I get older. For my family, basically, was kind of the mindset. And so through that journey, you learn how to invest and save. And so when it came to set, what I love about 7K is it's about the metals of it. So there's a couple things to think of it. There's two ways to earn money. One is to have money earn money, and then you have people earn money. Now you have your ability to earn money, but it's based off of a finite amount of time. You're only allowed so much ability. You're only given so much time. Where when you can get money to earn money, and then people to earn money. And so there's just two ways of how money is earned. With that, when you talk to somebody who does an investing, so when I was in college, we did, I've always been fascinated with finances and being able to understand how that money makes money through compounding interest. Now, compounding interest is kind of it's a miracle when you really think about it. And Warren Buffett loves talking about $1 to him is actually $5. So when he sees a $1 bill, it's more of like a $5 bill. And because of the miracle of compounding. Now, when you add gold and silver...
Is it just a miracle because we don't understand? Most of us don't understand it, so it's got to be a miracle. Or is it just math?
Well, it's
math.
It's math, right?
But most of us... I can't even comprehend it, you know what I mean? So it's like a miracle.
So everything's spiritual.
Right.
On it, right?
Right.
So in that sense, it's a miracle from a spiritual standpoint. But yeah, it's mathematics, right?
Yeah.
So we know that, for 250 years.
And the only reason I bring that up is because, I feel like some people don't, they won't even take the time to try and figure something out. But it's something that people figure out, and that people can figure it out. People should take the time to figure it out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well,
and it's simple. And what I love about the metals part of it, okay, is you can take $5, but then people worry about the investing and marks and where are you putting that money? Well, most of the time they'll put it in with one of their family members or somebody that's starting a business up. So a Kool-Aid stand, we're just going to call that a Kool-Aid stand, okay? Most people will say, hey, I'll help out with your Kool-Aid stand. Well, that's the most risky place to put it, but that's the most safe because we have a connection with that person. It's a value to us for that Kool-Aid stand. Well, if that person goes belly up, they lose out or whatever, and so you lose money. Well, we know that, and I love reading the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Have you ever read that?
I don't think I have.
So it talks about a guy who had no money, but at the time, he's the richest man in Babylon. And you start with, you get a little, 2 cents, and then you try to make a little bit of money on that 2 cents, and it grows. And so when they started the banking with silver and gold, right, 250 years ago, then you would put your money into a safe or a bank, and then over time that would grow in value. Well, interestingly enough, let's just kind of fast forward to 1913. The United States kind of started before that, but they started kind of the gold and silver standard. They went away with that and went away from that in 1971 when Nixon went away from the gold standard. So for the last 50 years, we have temporarily gone away from the gold standard. The problem with that is the dollar value of so in 1970, a dollar, I'm going to hold one up, okay? So a dollar and a silver dollar had the same value. In meaning that the silver dollar, and the reason why it's the silver dollar, to kind of give you the back history, is the silver dollar is the hardest one to be able to counterfeit. And so worldwide, it's just acceptable. Today, this is worth $33. How much is this worth? And especially in the last 2 years, right? So the value of this has gone down. It's actually 5% from 1990. So over the last 100 years, and the value that used to be the same, this is now 5% of what this is. But so when you think about the hedge against inflation, you could literally take this gold or the silver, they also have gold eagles too, and put it under your bed, and it's going to gain value. That $1 is now going to become $5 because of compounding interest. Now, if you were to just kind of put this in context for you, okay, if we were to take the same amount of money, so let's say that in 2001, we wanted to buy a house, and the average house then was $166,000 of American money, right? The dollar. This is also called fiat currency, okay? Fiat meaning that it's backed by a government of some sort.
Not backed by gold and silver anymore.
Not backed by gold and silver, right? Because we'd gone off of that standard.
Correct.
Now, we started that. Part of that's happened with right after World War II was the American dollar. That's where the American dollar kind of became the standard, because it was backed by gold and silver to help stabilize Europe and the world. Because you had Japan on one side, Europe, and there's just a lot of unrest during that time. And so they did the gold standard. The problem is as we got into the late 60s, early 70s, then the rest of the world said, yeah, I don't know if you actually have that much gold and silver. And so they started calling for it, and which is why we had to kind of go away from it. Because all of a sudden it'd be like, ooh, wait a minute, we're losing what we do have. And so in 1965, okay, and we're talking, well, I'll go back to 1965 for a second. So in 2001, you could buy a house for $166,000. Today, that same house would be worth about $330,000, but it's less silver and less gold in ounces you could buy. So to give you that in context, okay, today the value of the dollar, right, to try to buy that same house would cost you almost $400,000. Okay, but your house was worth $160,000. Now, some people are going to make money, some people would lose money. If you did that with just what you had in ounces of either gold or silver, for that same amount of ounces, you could buy 3 homes.
Yeah.
And so the reason why
the dollar has become worth
the
less.
dollar has, yes.
And those have
been
become
diluted.
worth more.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's become diluted off of that. And so when you're talking about savings, and I also love investing and invest in the stock market, but you've got to put a portion of that. Now, in my opinion, and I am not, even though I've studied on how to become a personal finance person, I'm not one. So it's kind of up to how you want to do it, but you need to make sure that you have 20% or 30%. Really, it's up to you. But I believe in like 25% having physical gold and silver to help hedge against inflation. And we're seeing that today.
Yeah.
And so if you have some way, and the idea behind it is it's not easy to just trade it in. So a lot of people will go like, well, there's the ask price and the bid price, right? Well, you have to find a place to sell that back in. Well, a lot of people will take it to the pawn shop, which is the worst place to go to trade it in, but that's where they go, right? And so now you need to know where you can go to sell that back in. But it's really a base of security, so call it insurance, so that if everything fell apart, right, what is it that you need? And then on top of the silver, you've got collectibles, there's bullion, right? There's different types of silver and gold that you can get because you don't know what you're going to need. So it's an insurance, but really it's the opportunity to create a legacy of understanding, well, what is it that you want to give to your kids, and be able to set back. So last time when we were speaking of after a year, you look back and go, well, what is it that you have, right? And I said, well, I earned $50,000 of gold and silver, but I didn't pay for that. And the reason why is because the miracle of compounding. Now, miracle of compounding on the dollar, which is what we're talking about here, from 1 to 5. But then you can also use the compounding of other people's efforts, right? Of miracle of compounding. So between the combination of those two is where that money comes in. That help answer that question a little bit?
Yeah. You're using compounding interest basically, or the value.
The concept. Of it. Yep.
Correct. And you're doing the same thing with the value of gold and silver, but also compounding people's efforts to create value.
So think of it, we know that taxes, this is how I look at it, okay? So in order to stay active as a business, right? Mm-hmm. There's tons of 1099 benefit that comes from having a home-based business for people. And so that benefit of having that actually pays and in my case, it actually pays for me to collect gold and silver. And so I am partnering with the government through the 1099 to get my silver paid for to own a business to be able to do that. So if that's too complex, we can talk about it some other time. But you understand that?
So so you're saying through tax savings?
Yeah.
Is that
through
what
the
you're
savings
saying?
of having a home-based business.
You're able to take those tax savings and then turn that through
Parlay it. Yep.
Right, through legal tax savings that the government gives you. That's how you're partnering with them. Is like
we have to pay taxes regardless, right?
Correct. But
so
I'm
just using the word partner with but regardless, it's taxes.
Correct.
Well, if I claim that through a 1099, which is a business, through 7K, because 7K is a legal operating BBB business, right? Well, they don't have a workforce when it goes out to a sales force, right?
Yeah.
They do that through 1099s.
Okay.
With people. So what you're doing is you're now having a 1099 that you're going to take the money, because in order to be part of that, you have to say, okay, well, I want to receive, gold or silver, and you can write. Now, obviously, if you want to get $1 million worth, you're going to be able to write all that off. But whatever it costs to do business, you can write that off in your gold and silver.
Huh. April, you getting all this?
I'm getting it.
Good. That's why.
So to answer that, so one of the things is you don't have to be active every month, but you would want to be, because by being active, you have to purchase. Now there's called numismatics, which is collectibles.
Okay.
And so this is a collectible one that's special through 7K. Now what they're doing, what creates, this is aside from buoyant type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What creates a value is limited editions, certain amount of low mintage, on those. So 7K has actually come up, and it's a brilliant. So in this idea, they've come up with a state series of American Silver Eagles. And what they've done is then they take through the printing process, and this is just kind of a newer version of printing, is they can color coordinate on the front of it. And so each state has a picture of, something that goes on with that state. Now, this one happens to be the Arizona rattlesnake. And so they have it printed on the front of it with this rattlesnake.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an MS-70, which means it is perfectly minted coming out of it. And then it's encapsulated, and then it dated the information on that, so that it's all, you can look at it and go, okay, that's not counterfeit. It's actually and it's the most valuable because it's printed perfect. So the value of these, now I paid $159 for it, but I could sell it today for almost $350 or so. And they actually have a way that you can sell that for it. But that's
And that's one of those state ones?
That's a state one, yeah.
And they just create a collectible, and it quickly just kind of has value associated with it because it's in demand.
So
People want that.
There's a $4.2 billion industry in collectibles of silver and gold, right? But it's just the same as people collect stamps or baseball cards. Not all of them are going to have a huge value, but there's some of them there's one that's the Montana. So there's a Montana butterfly, and it was the second one that came out in this series. And it's worth almost $1,000, and it came out not quite a year ago.
Oh, wow.
So what they're doing is they're creating a industry of new collectors through gold and silver, but it's also the numismatics, the collectors series. And they have not just this one, there's lots of different ones. But to kind of give you the context of what that comes, in 1986, Reagan said, hey, we got all this silver and gold. We need to do something about it. And so they created, back then, it would have been in October of 1986, they created the American Silver Eagle dollar. Now, we call it that because it's currency in the U.S., but you don't want to spend it as a dollar. People have, but the reality is it's worth $33. So you don't want to spend it for $1. But that makes it, that they just say that it's a country currency. So it makes it valuable for that, right? if you were to just collect one a month from 1986 to 2016, you would have spent almost $50,000 each month through the value of getting that through the U.S. Mint. But the value of that today is almost $2 million. In 2016, that value was $1.2 million. And so, to me, that is
so
kind
since
of
2016, it's almost doubled.
30 years, yep, more than doubled.
Well, but you said from 2016 it was 1.5.
Yes, you're
and
right.
then to now.
And the last time I saw it, the one of them went for was like 1.8 million.
Wow.
And so in the last 6 years, it's gone up. So what my vision of it is, other than just having something to say, hey, if everything went south, right?
Right.
We have some gold and silver, but the reality is most of it's probably something you're giving a legacy to your kids. And so for me, it's a matter of like, hey, I want to try to set one up for my kids that in 30 years, whatever they choose to do with it's their deal, right? But they can have that $1.2 million experience.
Right.
And I had a boss one time that said his goal in life was to get a silver or gold bar. And the reason why is he'd never be broke. He'd always have money. And it's interesting to think about those terms of what would you do if you knew that you had money, even if you are broke. And it's a matter of changing your thought process of how to do that. So through that process, and I wouldn't have said, even a year ago, am I really into collecting? I'm really not. But when it comes to the process of what the end goal is,
right,
and using it kind of as a hedge against inflation and being able to say, hey, my kids today, they all have about 12 or 13 coins that, because I kind of give them one to get them processed. They understand the value of $1 versus a silver dollar. And they also make, in the U.S. Mint, will make a gold eagle. And it's known worldwide. It's one of the most popular because it's the hardest to counterfeit through it. But the understanding, what people don't understand is the process of what it takes when it comes to the gold and silver, and what is it that you need. Because bullion does not have the value. It's not a money. It's not a currency of any of them. Now, there are currencies. So there's the Canadian leaf that you can get, and the British. So each one, any country that has a mint will also have currency that's printed in that mint. But then there's also bullion. And so the process, and they teach you all of this through 7K. They actually have, certificate. They call it buyer certification, collector certification. And
have you been getting into the bullion side of it then? Not what are the numismatics?
I'm more into
numismatics is collectibles. And then whereas the bullion is just the raw side of it.
Correct. Yep. And
raw
they
silver,
do.
Raw
so
gold.
You can get a the cheapest form of that would be a 1,000 ounce brick, and then you have 100 ounce, and then you have 10 ounces, and you have 1 ounces, and then there's rounds, which is also bullion. Technically, this is a bullion coin, I guess, if you want to really get, because it's not a collectibles bullion. Anyway, so yeah, I am a little bit. I'd like to get more into it because you need to have both, and the reason why that is there's countries in the world. Is it Venezuela that has now unstabilized? I don't know if they're coming out of that, where they've lost. There's people down there. I think it's Venezuela, but I could be off. One of the ones in the South American countries that are actually using gold and silver as a way of paying for food.
Wow.
To be able to get by.
I haven't heard that of I haven't been keeping track about what Venezuela's. I know that it's down there you can't get bread. I mean,
they've thrown all their money, their paper money, were all just littering the streets because it was worth nothing. So it very well could be that they're the ones using that.
And so, as the other side of this, right, is like, well, what if everything went south? What would you want to have besides bullets, right? Is you have to have something that people would see value in, and they're not going to see value in paper money if there's no value there, you know?
Yeah, it's just paper. There's nothing.
It's just paper.
There's nothing back in it.
Yep, it's funny. It's a weird concept.
So you were talking about how there's the compounding side of it. You're basically collecting. You're collecting gold and silver coins, and there's that side of it that's generating value. Maybe it's not so much creating wealth as it is maintaining wealth, correct? Is it more like...
well, and you're using it as a hedge. I mean, so you're maintaining... You're also
it's putting your money someplace where you're typically safely not going to lose it. It's maybe not creating, 100,000% return on something. It's exaggeration. Do you see what I'm saying? But it's actually keeping the wealth that you have today. If you were to take $33 to buy that one coin, whereas those dollars are going to become less over time, that coin is going to maintain its value over time, which is what it gives it the appearance of becoming more valuable. It's actually that the dollar is becoming less valuable.
Correct. It's actually the opposite of it. So they call it inflation. So in kind of going back to the 1965 story, so if I wanted to take $2,500, that's how much it would cost for a Corvette back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go with that. We're going to say, just to kind of throw the number out there, right? That I love the Mustangs, the Ford Mustangs. But they say that in 1965 it cost $2,500, and I could use either one because back then we were on the gold standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same. So the American Silver Eagle dollar was worth the same as a paper dollar, the fiat currency. Today, the paper dollar, that $2,500, could you go down and buy a Corvette for $2,500?
Yeah, no.
Now, just for fun, if you took $33 and took 2,500 of these, times it by $33, how many could you buy?
Yeah, I have no clue.
You definitely could buy that Corvette, right?
Exactly.
Technically, you could buy two off of the value of it.
Wow.
And so that alone is the concept of what I was teaching my kids even now is like, guys, here's the deal. When you go from 1998, which is when I started investing, to 2008, the stock market did not change. When you take a snapshot of 2008 and a snapshot of 1998, the stock market did not change, the overall value of it, right? So how much value did you get off of your return on it over a 10-year frame? Not much, right?
Yeah.
It does go up and down a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit if you can play it. But for 10 years, well, the people that are in the real estate, that are in investors, they actually have assets. They manage assets, right? So what they do is they try to build a portfolio up over $1 million, whatever, and then they try to manage those assets under management, is what it's called. And they take a premium, which is what it's called, but they just take a small percentage, 1 or 2% of what you're making over that course, and they call it their fee, right?
Right.
Well, over the course of your lifetime, that fee is more than half of the value that you're putting in.
Wow.
Because every year, every month, they're taking 1 or 2%, right?
Yeah.
And if you only make 1 or 2%, they're taking that out.
Wow, yeah.
And so the reason why you see them where they make a lot of money, but you're only getting a 5 or 6 return. And I've gotten in disagreements when, even with my own 401k from work, where I'm like, hey, so I want a 12% or 15% return. And they're like, well, I can't guarantee that, the most 5%, maybe 8%, but 5%. And I'm like, what do you mean? You can't give me a higher return than a 5%? Well, the banks will only give you 1%, right?
If that.
Well, going back to the 1965, $2,500, right, of sitting back on both of these, I can put this under my bed and get a return. Now, on average, silver's more volatile than gold. And so over the last 6 years, it's been about 13 to 16% on silver. And gold has been pretty consistent, almost at 9%. But when you talk with the average person, and what are we told when it comes to corporate America and talking with somebody, well, you need to talk to somebody who knows how to invest. And the best they can do for you is 5%, maybe 8% if you're lucky, right? 5 to 8. Well, the reason why is because they have all of this money that's under management, and they go out and just kind of gunshot. Let's just say it's a shotgun approach with their analogy of how they want to try to invest for people, hoping that they have one or two that hit really big, and then they average that.
That brings up that overall average of what they're able to return.
That they're able to give out and say, hey, this year I did 8% for you, but yeah, last year you did 2%. But hell, that was because we had COVID. Nobody was working. Well, what's interesting when you learn about the investing part of it is the important part is you've got to get in, because the money that ranges after that, they're going to have a lull. Nobody knows when that's going to come. Now, there's ranges. It can last 2 months. It can last 2 years. It can last 3 years, but it will come up. And so the value of, say, a stock will drop down, and then it kind of ranges up and down. And so there are some people that can beat the average. One of them is Warren Buffett. He's averaged a 25% return on his for the last 60 years. But his concept is to see the intrinsic value of each one of the businesses that he invests in. That intrinsic value is what we're talking about when it comes to silver and gold as a hedge against the rest of the inflation. And so you see the intrinsic value of whether you're looking at a company or whether you're looking at the value of what you're investing in. When I know that, you can get almost a 9% return by just putting gold under my bed, and a 16...
Is that where you're keeping it? Just for those of us who are wondering.
It's actually in a safe.
Oh, okay.
Under my bed, under
that would be.
There's also weapons under there. So and I love to wrestle, but it's a wrestling match. If you can get down there first, we'll see who gets there. Yeah. And the value of that is between the two of them. I can get so I'm taking my gold, take your silver, right? Put them together. I can get that 15% return. And the reason why I want 15% return is I know that my dollar is going to be worth $5 or $6 within 6 years. So that's what I'm looking for. So when I'm looking at investing, I want to invest. My goal is 15% on average, because I know that it will double its value within 6 years.
Wow. I think it's old math. I can't remember. If it was at 6%, I thought it was like every 12 years or something. Is it every 12 years? I don't know. That's an old thing, but I thought it was like at 6%. It takes 12 years for your money to double.
So
but
just think
at
of it.
15%, you're saying it's going to double several times, a couple of times.
Well, so this is where the concept comes in. And so compounding interest is where it gets a little complicated. But to make it simple, we're just going to do 10%, okay?
Okay.
So if I gave you $1 and I charged you 10% interest a year, APR, right? Annual rate of return. So that dollar, in a year from now, you're going to give me $1.10, right? $1.10. The compounding of that over the next year is next year I'm going to get $1. Instead of 10, I'm going to get now 11 cents. Because that 10 cents just made 10%, right?
On itself. Yeah.
On itself.
Right.
That's the miracle of compounding. Now, when you think of it in simple terms, if I threw this dollar in a pond, and now we're thinking of a dollar as a lily pad, okay? You following me here?
Yep.
That lily pad, it doubles every day just to make it easy, okay? At the end of 30 days, it's going to double again. What's the most important day of doubling for you in the course of a month? Day 30.
Yeah, that's true. That's where you want it to be when it doubles, yeah.
And so you got to think long term. And the reason why that is day 1, you have 1. Day 2, you have 2. Day 3, now you have 4. Does that make sense? So
Then you have 8.
Then you have 8, and then you have 16, and then you have 32, and then you have 64, and then you have 108, right?
Right.
And the last day, so the first, you remember, all the way up to day, we're going to say day 30, right, is the day that it compounds the last one. So day 29, it doubled every day, but you only have half a pond full of lily pads. The next morning you wake up and you now have a full pond of lily pads.
Because it's doubled that half.
It doubled that half.
Yep. So it brings me to an interesting thing. I heard somebody, and I can't remember where I heard it, but like to get out of middle class, people get stuck in this middle class thing. Look at not borrowing money, you're buying money. So get out of that frame mind of you're borrowing that money, you're buying that money. And it changes your way of thinking of how, when people put that on a credit card or put this or take this money, it's like you're not borrowing it, you're buying that money for this %,
Correct. So in retrospect to the world, right, we know that we are the richest country in the world. So if we were playing, what's that show where, Candace and my kid loves her, where she shoots the arrows and
Hunger Games?
Hunger Games, right?
Okay.
So if we're playing Hunger Games, which district do you think we are in the world?
It's been a long time.
I think we're the city.
We're the city. We're number 1, right? In the world view,
And it was Katniss.
It was Katniss. Yeah. Okay. So they're in 12th district. Okay.
We're not in those districts. We're in the city. Right? Is that what you were getting at?
As Americans, right?
Right. Where they're coloring their hair and they're...
The color in their hair and it's just so crazy.
Right.
The luxury.
The luxuries of it, right?
Right.
That's where we live. I mean, we just have to make sure we understand where we're at. So to say middle class to the world, that we're so far above that, it's freaking crazy.
Oh, it's insane. We're like where kings and queens used to be.
Absolutely, right? We throw food away, right? And, we do some stupid things.
But it's middle class for the U.S.
Now, exactly. So middle class for the U.S., absolutely. So interest rate, when you borrow, and this is crazy, when you borrow, how much do you think they give you on credit? How much do they charge you for your
24% typically.
24%.
21 to 24% for a credit card.
That means annually, every dollar that you borrow that year, you're paying 25 cents on.
Yep.
Right? The following year.
Yeah.
Well, most people, and the average is over $10,000 that people have on credit cards. Okay? And I'm not saying don't use credit cards. I use them.
Yeah.
But I use the concept of I'm buying.
You're buying that money. It's not a borrow situation.
Because if I use a credit card, I'm paying them a quarter. I would much rather have that reversed, right?
Yeah.
Where they're paying me a quarter to borrow it.
Yep.
And so that's the concept of, and the what I'm getting at was saying that we are the richest country in the world, right? The gluttony of it is we need to change our mindset. Yep. Is instead of being poor or rich or middle class, right? Is, hey, I can afford that. Do I want it, right? Because this is how much it's going to cost me. And most people don't understand. I mean, that's crazy. I'll have friends that even did finance classes with me, and they'll be like, hey, come out and check my car out. Brand new car that they had. And I'm like, well, how much did you pay for that? And they're like, oh, we'd love it. And they do this with homes a lot, right? I got this home, and I'm only paying 4%.
Yeah, over 30 years.
You know what I'm saying? You want to and 4% is great, right?
That's
in the 80s it was 12%. But what's the value that you're actually paying over 30 years? And the same with the car. Now, we all know that vehicles do they go up in their intrinsic value, or do they go down?
Way down.
They go down. You drive it off the parking lot and it's worth less than what you paid for it.
Yeah, but you end up paying 2 to 3 times
the amount the car's even worth.
Correct. Now, I have a sister. I have an older sister. It's not my younger sister. My older sister loves how she feels driving that car. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a different value than what I have. Because to me, it's like, I love how I feel driving a car that I know is paid off. No, I want it to look nice and, run is the number one thing.
Yep.
But to me, I have a different value system than she does.
Yep. That's what it breaks down to. People like, I have no value. I just want it to run well. That is my value.
That's where I don't really care how old it is. I don't care. I just want it to friggin' run.
Yeah, I put no value on how it looks. I don't put any value on any of that. No. I just want stuff to run.
I want to live in a van. I don't want a big home. I don't want any of that. I want a van. So
but that would go along with experiences, right?
Yeah.
We know
that's what I put my value in.
Yeah, so we know that when we leave this earth, right, the only thing we can take with us, to my knowledge, right, is the experiences that we have. Now, what we do with those experiences, everybody has a different view on. But it's the experiences that you have. So it's a matter of, what is important to us.
Yep.
And
everybody's different, and people put, in the homes and the cars and the clothes and the this, and that's fine. That's great. But I think you just, relative to what you want in life.
And, the value of what your clothes are is always an interest. Because I always find this interesting. I'm not one to really care what you wear because it covers your body. Although I understand the importance of looking nice, or, when you're going to a job presentation or whatever you need to do, you have to dress the part for, right?
Oh, absolutely.
My younger sister, and we were a year apart in school, she'll often tell people, Cody thinks the world's a stage. And what she means by that is I'll probably change my clothes 4 times a day. If you ever see me, I'll like, you'll change, and then I come home and it's, have you ever seen Secondhand Lions? You ever watched that movie?
Yes.
So we watched that movie years ago, and she was like, oh, that is so you. Both her and my wife were like, that's totally you. Where you see them walk in one time and they want to go hunting, so they take their farmer's clothes off and they come out in hunting clothes. And throughout the whole movie, they're just changing for whatever aspect that they're in their life, right? Well, that's how my wife and my sister and I've grown up with, we're really close. With my younger sister, and so they're like, oh, that is totally how he is.
You have to dress the part.
You dress the part, right? Yep. You dress the part. So life's a stage. Yep. And it kind of is, People value what it is that you do. So as an example of that, I grew up riding horses and going into outfitting and stuff. But if there's people I grew up with that are like, I never thought you would freaking have cows and horses and understand. They're like, that is so far away from what I think you would be. And then there's others that are like, oh, it totally makes sense, right? Because it depends on where their relationship with me was.
Right. And how you were dressed during that.
Absolutely, how you're dressed. And it's funny how people, there's times where I'll be talking with somebody or I'll listen to a conversation, and maybe it's an old rancher, right? And, I'm wearing shorts and a flip-flop and T-shirts. And I'll throw a response out only because it's driving me crazy listening to what they're saying. And you can tell that they don't value that opinion too much because of how I look at the time.
Well, and I think to get anywhere in the world and to get to these places that you want to be, you have to, simulate, not so much simulate, but yeah, you do. You have to gain respect, to move up in the world, to get
you have to be able to hit. You have to be willing to do certain things.
I always was told that you always should wear nice shoes. People always notice your shoes about you. Always make sure you have good shoes on.
I've had people actually
or clean shoes, not
clean,
red.
Yeah. I've had people say, and it's funny because there's people be like, if I really, this is one where you have to really know them, but it'd be like us sitting around going, and there's somebody outside. It's like, hey, Milo, there's somebody that's wants to meet you, and we'd be like, how's his shoes?
Yes.
Because if they're polished, that the guy, usually they come from the experience.
I think the shoe thing is good, though, because honestly, I noticed that, too.
I do, too, and I always make sure my shoes, like, if my shoes have a spot on them or not, I got to clean them. Like, I cannot wear shoes that are not.
So it's funny you say that, because this is just something I know about my personality. I got married, and my wife, I think I don't know, to say she had 15 shoes, 13. and she's like, I have nothing compared to how many shoes you got. And I would not by any means say that I am a shoe person. And I'm like, really? And I went in and counted, I had like 27. And I was like, maybe she has a point. And we would go out, and I find myself, it's kind of like when you walk by a mirror, you kind of glance at yourself a little bit. And I'd walk by shoe stores and I'd be like, oh, let's go in here and look, right? So I obviously care about shoes. And but I also know, like, in my current profession, right, that I'd laughed because we were going to a conference and I polished my shoes. We were sitting at a bar at like 2 a.m, and which is another funny story because I had left at like 11, and I kept getting these text messages like, your stock's going down value, you know, because I left. And I'm like, I'm not drinking, you know, I'm just sitting there drinking water, and I can only pee so many times. But so you're kind of sitting back going, well, I put my feet up, and my boss goes, hey, his shoes are polished. We had this whole conversation about my polished shoes because we were going to a conference, but none of them had theirs. You know, there was all their, you know, outside work boots that they just kind of threw on and went to their conference.
Shoes are a big deal.
I don't know what it is about shoes, but it's kind of maybe it's a subconscious thing about when you feel like somebody's paying attention to the details of their shoes, that they're paying to the details in other areas.
Well, I definitely think you can make that conclusion pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with, you know, this is just another, if you watch what color people are wearing that day, it will also tell you their mood.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Let's get into that. We don't have time for that. But
I think it's just women hit a certain age of over 30 and it's black because that's what looks the most flattering.
I don't know that that's all women.
I don't know if, I can tell you that me personally, right? And this has something to do with like, you know, today I'm wearing a white shirt. Well, we've been conditioned, let's say, because I know I'm going to church after this, that you need to wear a white shirt to church, and there's a whole history of that.
There's a huge thing on women in black because once you hit a certain age, like lighter colors show imperfections or dimples or little things. So women wear black because it is more slimming and it, you know, it doesn't show all your imperfections.
Maybe I'm not paying attention to what other women around here are wearing, but I just know April wears a lot.
You will
of
now.
black.
Now you're gonna
You'll be like, oh,
you're gonna be watching,
black,
seeing
black.
I do too. I don't so much.
And it's also our job.
Well, here I am today. I'm wearing black.
And look at me, I'm in brown and light colored. So.
Yeah, but mostly on days off, I don't wear black so much. But I wear black because of the job. Yeah,
I would say pay attention to important days of people's lives. So, like when someone comes in and they are retiring, maybe they have a big announcement to make. If you watch what color they're wearing, it tells them their mood. It's kind of an interesting thing. So that's not to say that you have to take in consideration, you know, if your outfit, let's just call it your uniform for whatever job you're doing, has to be a certain color, then that's going to kind of override that person's mood for the day.
Yeah.
But when they just get to pick whatever they want to wear, and they can be in different colors, pick that, and it'll actually tell you a lot about how they're feeling. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
It's interesting, but there is LBD, which is a little black dress, and that every woman has to have a black dress.
That's right.
So it's a thing.
I have a black suit and a black tie.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Well, and you use them mostly when you go to funerals, right?
I don't really go to a lot of funerals.
No.
I try not to.
We don't frequent too
It's a
many
killer
of those.
for people.
It really is.
You know, around here, I've been to a few funerals around here, and people don't get dressed up for funerals.
No, and it is. I think that has to do with the region that we're in.
Yeah. Oh, totally demographic in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And you're right.
Yeah.
And we also had, like, I know growing up, you know, I've had friends pass away and stuff, and it was never a funeral. It's a celebration of life. So people wear not black. They wear different colors.
Yeah, that's kind of been changing too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I told my family that too. I said, when I die, I want you guys having a party. Like, first off, I don't believe that there's that when we die, that it's any different than when we're born. I think it's a transition period. And so because of that belief, I don't want people freaking crying.
It makes it a little easier.
Have a party. And
I'm old school. I want everybody in tears.
and somebody will come up.
Just miserable, wailing. Lots of wailing.
I'll be the one that's like, well, at least he's not an asshole anymore.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'm telling you what. At least we're not, yeah. No, I'm kidding. I don't even know what I don't really think about all that, but I don't know what I want. I don't want. I do know what I want. I've already arranged it with Connor, and he knows what to do. So, and he's in. I'll tell you about that off camera because I don't want to spoil it for everyone.
Wood chippers involved and
close. Okay, well this has been super interesting. I'm glad you're sharing some of this with us because we touch on it every now and then in passing. You're with this. You're associated with this company. 7K helps you to basically you're solidifying your legacy for you, your kids.
Yeah, I look at it as an investment opportunity.
Yeah,
and it leaves a legacy. So for me, it's more of a this is what I'm, one of the aspects of how you're, building wealth, but leaving a legacy for the kids.
That's awesome. I know Connor has gotten into coins here and there, and I need to follow back up with him on that one. That's a funny story, but he was collecting coins. He got back from his mission, and he was collecting coins left and right, and he and I were editing videos together. And one day, we had this super difficult day of computers and crashing and problems, and Connor's just like, I got to go to Billings. And he, one day I felt bad because we were having problems editing. He went and cashed in all of his coins that he had been collecting and went and bought a new computer, went and bought a new Mac. And after that, I felt bad. I was like, oh, he had a nice little start going there with his coins there. And I felt bad that at that moment, the value was more in, we have to get this video stuff done. And I'm like, this is a drop in the bucket compared to what the bigger problem is of life. I hated that he had to do that, but it also showed me how serious he was taking what we were doing. And, but anyway, neither here nor there. I would hope he's getting back into that.
Well, and I think I
need to get into it more for sure.
It's a fun way of investing where you don't have to watch what happens.
That's so true.
World.
That's so true because we get so caught up in everything else that we're doing that I'm looking for little ways to diversify what we do or how we. What's going on over there?
I got my
I loved it. It was
like
funny.
underneath the wheel.
Oh wow!
Like the one, like whoa!
I thought we were about to lose her over there. But anyway, yeah, we're looking for ways because honestly, you know why we work as hard as we do? I mean, April just said it a little while ago. We work as hard as we do so that someday we can afford to live in a van.
Well, and I think that's we just bought. This is funny you say that. So my dad, and he was very much kind of like a gypsy, especially after prison, and he bought a camper trailer, and
we're gonna have to. That's gonna be a podcast episode because you've never expanded on that. But go ahead, keep going.
He, said and I can remember right before my mission, I went and stayed with them for a while, and we were sleeping in the slide-in camper trailer. And he goes, if you have a camper, he goes, you're never homeless. And that's always stuck with me, those words, right?
Yeah.
Because that was his view of it was, you're never homeless. And so we've looked for one, and we do not want anything. Both my wife and I were just like, we just want a place you put storage and have a, bed, and, we'll cook outside and use the restrooms around the way, whatever.
Yeah. We want a nice van, but it's a state of mind. It's a state of life. We are just trying to put less value in like some of the stuff that doesn't really matter.
Well, and you think about it, right? I totally am a person that can live in. I mean, now I've experienced life. You can build yourself a little home or whatever, but I could totally be one that's like, we can put a canvas tent up and
me too.
Like I don't really have to have everything that comes with it. And the older you get, the more it's like
you don't care.
Yeah, well, you don't see value in somebody, even though you understand the shoe concept, right? You don't have to live that way. You know what it is, you understand it.
I think that comes with getting older too. The things that you put value in when you're 20 to the things you put value into when you're 40 are completely, I know for me, they're completely opposite. Nothing's the same.
So it's interesting you say that, because when I was 18, I wrote down everything I wanted to accomplish in life, right? And there's one left. I mean, and some of them are goals that are lifelong.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be Christ-like. You want to try to like give people service. No, some of those were those goals, but one of them was to wrestle in Europe, and which is funny because the last 2 years, I've been the international exchange for the USA Wrestling. Hopefully this year we're able to take a group back. Now, when I wrote that, I was thinking I would be a part of the team that wrote, in a different, not the coach, but the person to be out there. But it's things that we set with it. But that also tells me, and I've hit every one that I've wanted to, so I've had to make other goals in life. But what that does is it focuses us. It puts us in a focused mindset of what is it that you want out of it.
What's important to you.
And what's important to you. And it's the same with creating a trip each year. And if you think about this is a funny aspect of life. If you have a goal and you focus on that goal, it will come generally if you have a big enough desire to accomplish it. And there's always going to be a time right before it happens where it looks like it's never going to happen. You don't have the money, you can't do it. And then right at the end, something happens where you can do it. If you have it does not matter, I'm going to freaking sell my gold coins, right, or silver coins to make it happen because of the value that you see in that. But it can. The desire is the only thing that's the prerequisite for us to achieve anything that we want in life.
It's my favorite part of everybody's success story, because there's always a part where there's almost no way out, and it had to happen, and it happened.
Absolutely, and it's true. It's true for everything, but people don't. I always tell my kids, I go, you're in a race that 95% of the people don't understand. And the reason why that is because thoughts become things. And if you have a big enough desire and you have a big enough goal, and it should be scary and it should be intimidating and it should be audacious, right? Because those are the ones where it helps us grow and achieve what we want. And one of those was, on mine was I wanted to have a place that I had between 5 and 25 acres where I could have horses and four-wheelers and those kind of things. Well, that's what I've been living in for the last 18 years. And so it's little things like that you look back and go, wow, I really did accomplish that,
Yeah. Well, big dreams, accomplish big things. I think we've covered it. We've said it all. We've probably said too much.
We're all going to leave going, wow, I did not know that about each other.
Yeah, exactly. And we are crunched on time. I'm going to feel bad if we don't get you out of here.
All right, let's get going.
Man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate you taking the time to come down here and teach us some stuff. And we will do this again. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes,
thank you.
All right.
Look at that. Did that help answer your questions?
It did.